I patted the dust off my body and walked towards my car in a depressed mood. When Musia saw me walking back, she hurriedly got out of the car and ran towards me. "Zhang Yuan, are you okay?" she asked me with an anxious face, and it could be seen that she was very worried about me just now. In order not to worry her, I smiled at her and said, "It's okay, this matter has been solved by my boss. Let's go, I'll take you to work." Musia looked at me with some doubts, and then saw that I looked serious, so she nodded and got into the car with me. I sent Musia to the company where she worked, and then told her that when she got off work, I would come to pick her up and ask her to wait for me, and so on, so I drove back to China Resources. Walking in the company, the employees of China Resources who passed by respectfully called me young man one by one. I also replied to them with a casual smile, and then went to Uncle Hua's office. They know my relationship with Uncle Hua, and they all call me a young son in private. At first, I didn't get used to it, but over time I got used to it. I pushed open the office door and went in, where Uncle Hua was doing business. I went and poured a glass of water and sat down on the couch next to me. Uncle Hua looked up at me with glasses. "Why is your face so ugly?" I took a sip of water, calmed down and said, "Uncle, Chen Million came to me before." I told Uncle Hua everything that happened before. Uncle Hua slapped the table suddenly. His expression was extremely angry. "This money is also $1 million mother doesn't give me by Hua's face, and dares to bully you like this behind my back. Really, I'm a decoration." Uncle Hua's face was extremely terrible at this time, and he was really angry. He picked up the phone on the desk and started calling. I don't know who he was calling, but when he finished, he asked me to go with him to find the money and settle the account. Sitting in the car, Uncle Hua made a phone call to Qian Wanwan, and they made an appointment to meet in a tea house. When we arrived at the tea house, we were greeted by a black Land Rover. Sitting in the car was also a middle-aged man, probably in his 40s, with some hideous scars on his face, which looked terrifying. I know this person. His name is Chao Qiansui. He is a good friend of Uncle Hua, and he often goes to Uncle Hua's house to drink with Uncle Hua. I don't know what he does, and Uncle Hua hasn't told me about it before, but the two of them have a good relationship. I didn't expect Uncle Hua to call him over. He came over with a smile and rubbed my head. I was a little dissatisfied, because he likes to rub my head every time we meet. But I didn't dare to get angry with him, just because of the scar on his face. "Uncle Chao," I politely shouted to him. He nodded and said with a smile, "I see that your kid is usually very gentle, but I didn't expect your kid to have a time when he couldn't help but do it. Young people, you should be a little bloody. Don't be like a girl. Others bully you and don't dare to fart. What are you afraid of? He has it. You kid doesn't have it, and it may be bigger than him when you take it out. If he dares to provoke you, you kid will beat him to death. If something happens, your uncle and Lao Tzu are here. See who dares to protect the calf." On the phone, Uncle Hua had already made the matter clear to him, so he also knew that I was bullied by the old guy with millions of dollars. Uncle Chao's personality has always been so hot. Don't look at him talking and smiling at me now. He is actually a master who has to do it before he says two sentences. In his words, it's a bohemian love of freedom, but he's been like that for decades. "Let's go, that old guy is already waiting inside. I want to see how awesome this old guy is, dare to threaten Lao Tzu's nephew." Uncle Hua said a word, and strode inside. Uncle Chao also walked into the tea house. I walked behind them. With them, I was quite confident in my heart. Under the guidance of the waiter, we went to a very luxurious private room. Qian Million was already sitting inside, and he was still playing with the two iron balls in his hands. And next to him sat a middle-aged man, dressed as a businessman, and the expression on his face was incomprehensible. Uncle Hua walked inside with a cigarette in his mouth, and when Qian Million saw my Uncle Hua, he and the person next to him also stood up, smiling and saying some polite words. "Yo, Chao Chitos, you're here, this meeting is really not small." Another middle-aged man said to Uncle Chao with some sarcasm, "It seems that they have known each other before, and they still have grievances." Uncle Chao glanced at him and said, "You old guy can come, why can't I come? I'm here to see how you old guys throw off your skin and bully a junior." When I walked over, Uncle Chao whispered to me that the other person was Chao Seer, the in-law of Qian Million, nicknamed Xiao Sai, who was in business. Uncle Hua and the others sat on the sofa, and I stood behind them. "Since they're all here, Boss Qian, can you tell me how to solve this matter?" Uncle Hua said directly to Qian Million. Qian Million played with the two iron balls in his hand and said, "How to solve it? My son is still lying in the hospital, let's talk about the issue of compensation directly. 1 million is considered to compensate my son for medical expenses and mental damages." Hearing the 1 million spit out of Qian Million's mouth, my heart couldn't help but be shaken, thinking that Qian Million is really fucking black. A million? Why aren't you going to rob a bank? The money comes quickly, it depends on whether you two old boys have a life to spend it. Uncle Chow said in a mocking tone. I don't need you Chowchitos to care about this if there is a life flower. At least we're harder than some people's lives. Didn't I say that someone, this ass is wiped clean, and he dares to bounce around outside again, and he is not afraid of breaking that old arm and leg? Xiao Seer immediately replied. Then why don't the two of us stumble now and see whose life is harder? Uncle Chow looked at Xiao Seer with sharp eyes. The scar on his face looked particularly eerie and terrifying at this time, and Uncle Chow also had the intention of taking action immediately. Xiao Seer was just a businessman after all, and he knew that he couldn't beat Uncle Chow, so he immediately stopped talking. Boss Hua, do you think the compensation I said is quite reasonable? Chen Wanwan ignored Uncle Chow, just looked at Uncle Hua and said. I want to say reasonable fart, it's no different from grabbing money. But I didn't expect Uncle Hua to smile and say, well, it's quite reasonable. Uncle Chow also looked at Uncle Hua with a surprised expression. Lao Hua, you have a lot of money. If you really can't use the money, then you give it to Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu can also use this money to find a group of beautiful little girls. 1 million is enough to raise a few beautiful girls in their early 20s. Qian Million heard that Uncle Hua was willing to compensate him for 1 million, and the old face smiled like a chrysanthemum. Okay, Boss Hua is really magnificent, I like to negotiate with a cheerful person like you. Uncle Hua took a sip of the tea on the table, then stretched out his hand to Qian Million and said, then bring it. Qian Million looked at Uncle Hua with a puzzled face and asked, what to take? 1 million, didn't you say you would compensate me for 1 million? Then give it to me, I support cash, checks, and online transfers. Uncle Hua said to Qian Million with a flat face. Qian Wanwan's face immediately turned gloomy. Boss Hua, you are mistaken, it was your driver who sent my son to the hospital. Now it's up to you to compensate me 1 million. This $1 million is really shameless. He has always only said that his son was injured, and did not say that I was injured by his son and my car was smashed by his son. Oh, I see. Uncle Hua picked up the chopsticks, put a piece of dim sum in his mouth, took a bite, and then slowly put down the chopsticks in his hand. Qian Million looked at Uncle Hua impatiently. Suddenly, Uncle Hua moved. He got up suddenly, grabbed Qianwan's hair, and slammed his head on the table. Then Uncle Hua suddenly picked up the teacup on the table and smashed it on Qian Million's head. The teacup immediately shattered, and the hot tea and tea leaves in it were poured on Qian Million's head. Qian Million was scalded by the tea, and immediately shouted bitterly. Xiao Seer immediately stood up and was about to help with money, and at this time Uncle Chow also moved. He kicked Xiao Seer to the ground with a slam kick, and before he could get up, Uncle Chow grabbed a chair next to him and threw it at Xiao Seer on the ground. The chair smashed directly into Xiao Seer's body, and he immediately howled on the ground. The old guy still dares to push me. You don't even know your mother. Uncle Chow clapped his hands, and then said to Xiao Seer on the ground with disdain. I was stunned when I looked at it directly. I didn't expect Uncle Chow to be so violent. He was in his 40s and still so sensitive. Cleaning up Xiao Si is like playing. And Qian Million was grabbed by Uncle Hua's hair, and immediately stretched out his hand and struggled. Uncle Hua picked up a pair of chopsticks and inserted them into Qian Million's left palm, and the chopsticks directly pierced his palm, and Qian Million immediately roared like a pig. But Uncle Hua held the chopsticks tightly, and Qian Million couldn't take his hand back, so he could only shout bitterly. Now can we talk about compensation? Uncle Hua let go of the hand that grabbed Qian Million's hair, looked at Qian Million with a painful face, and said in a flat tone. Although Uncle Hua's tone was flat, he was holding the chopsticks tightly in his hands, and a stream of bright red blood also flowed out of Qian Wanwan's palm, printing a small piece of red on the table. Qian Million's crying father called his mother, and hurriedly begged Uncle Hua for mercy, saying that he was willing to lose money. At this time, Qian Million was quite embarrassed, and a head of Biluakun tea was attached to the Mediterranean Sea in the middle of his head. and a few hairs around the Mediterranean Sea were also wet with tea, dripping water down, looking very funny. This is also the first time I have seen Uncle Hua do it. I didn't expect Uncle Hua, who is usually gentle and elegant, to smile at everyone, to have such a bloody side. And Qianwan's family can be regarded as having fallen into blood mold, and his son Qian Fei Gan was sent to the hospital by me for bullying me. He was a millionaire because he stood up for him, and he was also made into this stupid by my Uncle Hua. This is also in line with the sentence, don't bully honest people are crazy but bite people. Uncle Hua glanced at him with chopsticks, and then suddenly pulled the chopsticks out of his palm, and Qian Million immediately cried out in pain and howled loudly, miserable as killing a pig. And Chao Seer on the ground on the side also struggled to get up from the ground, and he looked at Uncle Chao with some resentment on his face. What's the matter? I'm not convinced. Then Lao Tzu will accompany you to practice? Uncle Chao looked at Chao Seer with a blank face and said, rubbing his fists after speaking, giving me the feeling that the sword is not old. As soon as Chao Seer heard that Uncle Chao was going to practice with him, he immediately coaxed, sat on the sofa on the other side and shrugged his head and didn't come over. Uncle Hua sat on the chair and stretched out his hand to draw a few pieces of paper and put it in front of Qian Million. Qian Million glanced at Uncle Hua with a cloudy expression, picked up the paper in front of him and covered the blood hole in his palm. This incident was caused by your hapless son. If he hadn't taken the initiative to provoke Xiao Yuan, according to Xiao Yuan's character, he wouldn't have done anything to your unlucky son. Although your son was beaten into the hospital by Xiao Yuan, not only was my car smashed by your son, but Xiao Yuan's shoulder was also injured, which is considered to be even. As for what I'll do to you, that's if you don't give me face first. I called you last night and said that I would talk about this matter and don't bother Xiao Yuan. But you didn't give me this face, and you did something to bully the big in the morning, so I naturally want to teach you a lesson. As for this matter, I think it's over, and I don't want you to compensate for it, but you go home and take care of your unlucky son, so that he doesn't think about bullying others all day long, otherwise he will lose money in the future. Uncle Hua took the cup again and poured 2 cups of tea. One was placed in front of Qian Million. He picked up a cup and took a sip and said slowly, Boss Hua, this time I confess to someone, and we will have a meeting later. After Qian Million finished speaking with a gloomy face, he got up and walked out with Chao Seer while covering his injured hand. Uncle Hua was smoking a cigarette and looked at Qian Million and Chao Seer, who went out indifferently. This time Liang Zi is settled, and Qian Million has suffered such a big loss, he will definitely not give up so well. This can be seen from his gloomy funeral face just now. But I have Uncle Hua's backing, so I naturally won't be afraid of him. In fact, I hope that one day I can not rely on Uncle Hua and be able to take charge of myself. But I know that if I want to become a person like Uncle Hua, I still have a long way to go in the future. Uncle Chao was going to Uncle Hua's house to drink with Uncle Hua, so I drove Uncle Hua back, and then turned around and prepared to pick up Musia from work. After all, this is what I promised her, and this is also a good opportunity for me to get close to her, and I will definitely not give up. I came to the downstairs of Musia's company and parked the car, and I waited for her to come down. After waiting for a few minutes, Musia walked out of the company, but her face was not very good, because she was accompanied by a dogskin plaster. He kept talking to Musia. Looking at the man's dress, he looks like a dog, wearing a black suit and tie, which is a bit like a successful person. When Musia saw me, she hurriedly smiled and walked quickly towards me. The man followed, but he kept looking at me. Let's go, I'll take you home. I smiled and said to Musia. Musia nodded to me, and then said to the man in the suit who was following her, Director Zhao, my friend is driving to pick me up, so I won't bother you to drive me. I could clearly see that when Musia said that I was her friend, his face was visibly happy. Sia, how can you and I say the word tired? This is too outlandish. Brother, have you eaten? Sia has just finished work and hasn't eaten yet. Why don't I invite you to dinner? He said to me with an enthusiastic look. I'm really hungry now, and I haven't even eaten to get to pick up Musia. Originally, I was thinking of driving her back to her house, and then I would stop by and grab a bite to eat. And he's also very good at talking, and his set of remarks that consider Musia is not easy for me to refuse. Not yet. I'm honest. When he heard this, his face immediately showed joy, and he hurriedly said to us, "Then it's decided. I know that a high-end Western restaurant has just opened nearby, and I have long wanted to eat it, but I haven't had time. Today, while it's time for me, I'm going to give you a taste of it." Musia originally wanted to refuse, but others said so, and it was not good for her to refuse directly, so she nodded helplessly in the end. Musia sat in my car, he drove his own car in front of the way, and the two cars drove directly towards the high-end Western restaurant, he said. In the car, Musia complained to me a little, "Zhang Yuan, why did you promise him to go to dinner? I have always been annoying him. I think he's very good. Why did he offend you?" I asked her as I drove the car. "What's the matter? He sticks to me like chewing gum every day, and I'm almost annoyed with him," Musia said complainingly. "That means you're very attractive in your company. Isn't it a good thing to have a suitor who likes you so much?" I smiled. "What's good? What annoys me most is that he is a person who is blind and shows off when he has a little money. He also confessed to me before, saying that as long as I am with him, I don't have to work so hard in the future, he can support me, and he can buy everything I want." "Zhang Yuan, you say this is a confession? This is obviously a package in raising. Although I don't have any money, I'm not the kind of woman who needs a man to support me. Why should I let a man support me if I have hands and feet?" I turned him down at the time, but he still stuck to me like chewing gum. "What do you say he likes about me? I can't change it," Musia said to me helplessly. I smiled. This kind of person is a bit annoying. Thinks that he has some ability, some money, and women all over the world must like him. And to live according to his ideas, which is really unbearable. I don't think a man like him should look for a type like Musia, he should look for that kind of money worshipper. I think that kind of woman is more suitable for him, after all, he is rich. Alright, stop complaining. After all, you're in a company, and he's the director, so it's not good for you to stiffen your relationship with him, I advised her. She sighed, who's to say it isn't? If it weren't for this job, I would definitely not pay attention to someone like him who thinks he is self-righteous when he has money. I suddenly wanted her to resign from this company and come to work at China Resources. After all, she is really too tired to work here to do business, and I can help her arrange a relatively easy job when she comes to China Resources. But this idea is only fleeting in my head. Musia will not let me arrange her work at all. As she just said, she hates people who are self-righteous when they have money. If I do, she'll definitely hate me too. And I told her before that I was Uncle Hua's driver. If I suddenly give her a job at China Resources, then she will think that I was lying to her before. Then the friendship we had just established was about to be shattered in an instant. Parking the car outside Justin's restaurant, I got out of the car with Musia. And the director Zhao hurriedly walked towards us. He looked at the Mercedes-Benz parked behind me, and asked me with a smile, "Brother, your car is quite good. I wanted to buy this model of Mercedes-Benz some time ago, but when I went to the 4S store to see the car, the manager there told me that this model would have to wait a long time to get the current car, because I was in a hurry to drive, and finally I had no choice but to give up this Mercedes-Benz car and choose the Audi A4 I am driving now." Well, I gave up more than 1 million Mercedes-Benz and chose an Audi of about 300,000. I don't know why, but I always felt like he was bragging. I smiled helplessly. This car is not mine, it belongs to my boss. I'm just a driver. When he heard that I was the driver, the smile on his face instantly became very stiff, and there was a look of contempt in his eyes. He smiled and didn't continue to talk to me, but said to Musia, "I'll call and reserve a seat on the way. Sia, let's go in." Well, he's changing his face so quickly. I used to be very enthusiastic about me, but when I heard that I was a driver, my attitude immediately changed. But I don't care, anyway, I'm just a white eater, and his attitude towards me won't affect my appetite, because I'm really hungry now. Musia glanced at me, and when I nodded, she said to him to go in. He smiled and nodded to Musia, and then led us inside. I have to say that this Western restaurant is really high-end. It is full of Western-style design, and the decoration is quite magnificent. And the business here is very good, and it is full of people. Since he had already reserved a seat, when the beautiful waitress came over, he said a few words, and we were all taken to a large empty table. The beautiful waitress put a menu on the table and smiled and let us order. He handed the menu to Musia very gentlemanly, and as for me, he completely ignored it. Musia opened the menu and looked at the prices under the dishes above, and her brows couldn't help frowning. I glanced at it, and the dishes here are really not ordinarily expensive, and this dish will be half a month's salary for ordinary people. It's okay, Sia, you can eat whatever you want, he said with a pretending to be big. Musia glanced at me, I looked at her with a smile, she nodded and said, then I want this. And this, coming to this. Besides, give me some. I was a little helpless when I watched it from the side. She was really unkind, and directly ordered nearly 10 dishes in one go, and she also chose the most expensive point. Although Director Zhao still had a smile on his face next to him, I always felt that he was smiling a little awkwardly. It is estimated that he is in pain at this time. Musia ordered 2 more dishes, handed the menu to me, and said to him apologetically, this is the first time I've been to such an upscale place, and I really want to try all of the things I just ordered. I'm sorry, Director Zhao, let you break the bank. He smiled awkwardly, and then hurriedly said, it's okay, you can order whatever you want, we can come back next time if we haven't eaten enough this time. I thought to myself, I guess after this meal, you will never want to eat here again in the rest of your life. After all, after Musia's point just now, he went out in more than 10,000 yuan. Even if he had money, he couldn't be so bad. I don't think I need to order it, it's more than 10,000 things. Besides, you can't eat as much as you can order alone, so let's save a little, I said to them. He glanced at me with disdain, probably thinking that it was the first time for me to come to such a place to eat, and then he was directly frightened when he saw such an expensive price, so he didn't dare to order it. I haven't eaten it before, so now I don't have a chance. You're welcome, you can order whatever you want, he said to me in a mocking tone. He asked me to order it, so I'm welcome. Waiter, let's take a copy according to the beauty just now. I'd also like to try the one she just ordered. I smiled and said to the waiter. The waiter nodded politely, and then wrote it down with a pen. But at this time, Director Zhao's face was not good looking, but after all, Musia was here, and he was not angry with me. And he asked me to order it himself, and the table here is big enough to fit the dishes I just ordered. If he behaves too carefully, it will definitely leave a bad impression on Musia. Now nearly 30,000 will go out, and he is really going to hurt. Director Zhao, it's time for you to order, Musia said to him with a smile. He was stunned for a moment, then hurriedly opened the menu and looked at it. Director Zhao, why don't you have another copy according to what I ordered? This way the chef can also get it faster. I'm really hungry right now and I don't want to wait too long. Seeing that he hadn't decided what to eat after flipping through the menu for a long time, Musia suggested to him. His hand flipping through the menu immediately stopped, stunned for a moment, and then smiled and said to the waiter, okay, then give me a copy as it is. I saw that his hands were shaking as he flipped through the menus, and there was a lot of fine sweat on his forehead. What else do you need, ladies and gentlemen? The waiter asked us with a smile. Musia thought for a moment and asked her, can you tell me about your red wines here? She nodded and flipped the menu to the wine column. All the red wines we have here are produced by Chateau Paquet in Provence, France, and each bottle has an anti-counterfeiting label on it, which can be verified online. All the types of wine in our restaurant are here, so please choose from them. Musia stared at the various red wines on the menu, and finally pointed to the most expensive one and said, that's it. I glanced at the price below. It's not very expensive, it's just 4 nines behind one. And the corners of Director Zhao's mouth twitched directly, and I wondered if he was about to commit epilepsy. But I don't seem to have to worry about this. Didn't Musia say that Director Zhao was very rich before, so she must have invited her to drink the 19999 red wine. And I'm just a guy who eats white food incidentally. After all, with money, none of this is a big deal, right? Director Zhao, can I drink this? Asked Musia, looking at Director Zhao with a pleading look. The corners of his mouth twitched, and then he said widely, okay, we'll drink this. Do you need any other drinks, gentlemen? The waiter asked us again. No, I'll just drink red wine, I hurriedly said to her. Just kidding, at the point he was going to squirt blood. I'd better be aware of the times and don't add fuel to the fire. Thanks, I usually only drink red wine, he said with a smile on his face and a wave of his hand to the waiter. The waiter bent over us slightly and told us to wait a little before leaving. Sia, you talk to your friend first, I'm going to go to the bathroom, he said to Musia. Musia nodded, and he stood up and went to the bathroom. As soon as he left, I turned my head to stare at Musia and asked her with a smile, you deliberately manipulated him, right? Yes, doesn't he always say how rich he is? Don't think I don't know he looks down on you just because you're a driver. I hate that kind of person the most. You also rely on your own skills to make money, why does he look down on you? Since he wants to pretend to be big, then I'll let him pretend to the end, Musia said with an indignant face. It was then that I learned about the other side of Musia's beautiful face. That's to offend her, she can make you cry. But when I heard her say that she also helped me get angry, my heart suddenly warmed. After all, for so long, except for my grandparents, that is, Uncle Hua has really been good to me. Now Musia can care about me and think about me, and I enjoy this feeling. And the feelings I had for Musia in college are now slowly sprouting again from the bottom of my heart. I'm going to the bathroom once and I'll be right back, I said to her. She nodded, and I got up and walked to the bathroom. When I walked into the toilet, I saw Director Zhao holding water in a sink and constantly hitting his face. I walked over to him in confusion and shouted to him, Director Zhao? When he heard my voice, he immediately raised his face to look at me. His face was full of water, his expression was angry, and his eyes were red, and he said to me, Did you mean it just now? Because I looked down on you, and then you deliberately manipulated me? I pretended to be stunned for a moment and said, Director Zhao, what are you talking about? Why don't I understand? You're just a driver who drives for others. If it weren't for Musia, I wouldn't have talked to someone of your level at all, because I would lose my value. And it's your blessing that I can invite you to such a high-end place, and I think if I don't help you pay for a while, your salary of 2,000 or 3,000 yuan a month will definitely not be paid. So you'd better be sensible and help me say something nice in front of Musia and let her stay with me. Otherwise, you'll just wait to be caught here and taken to the police station. After he finished speaking to me in a disdainful tone, he went to the side to draw paper and wipe his face. I don't know who gave him this confidence. I can't pay him to pay for me? Not to mention eating this meal here, even if I eat here 10 times, I don't need him to pay for me. Director Zhao, don't pretend to be wide if you don't have money, otherwise you will be regarded as a fool. Also, I don't need you to help me pay for my own food for a while, and I, Zhang Yuan, am not so poor that I even have to be paid for my food, I said to him in a flat tone. He sneered, Don't you need me to pay for you? Driver, when you can't pay for a while and get caught, you have to remember to beg me, maybe I'll help you pay if I'm soft-hearted. After all, it's a small amount of money to me, but for a driver like you, it's an astronomical amount. After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked straight outside. Looking at his back, I cursed a stupid sentence directly in my mouth.